Today, I am thrilled to welcome a master of suspense and storytelling to the Lean to the Left podcast, David Baldacci, one of my favorite authors of all time. Known for his razor sharp thrillers and unforgettable characters, Baldacci's kept millions of readers, including me, on the edge of their seats worldwide. Since his explosive debut with Absolute Power, Baldacci's written over 40 bestsellers, each delivering a pulse-pounding blend of intrigue, justice, and the moral dilemmas that define our times. Beyond his achievements in fiction, Baldacci's a passionate advocate for literacy, founding the Wish You Well Foundation, which works to eradicate illiteracy across America. His commitment to this cause speaks to the values at the heart of his stories, where underdogs fight for justice and the truth, often against staggering odds. Baldacci's work resonates with readers not just for the suspense, but for his profound insight into human nature and society. He brings to life the grit and resilience of everyday people, inviting us to question right from wrong and reminding us of the power of courage in the face of adversity. Today, we'll dive into the mind behind these gripping narratives and explore the craft, inspiration, and passion that fuel his work. David, I've just got to tell you, Absolute Power is one of my all-time favorite books. I remember being instantly hooked by the bold question you posed: could the President of the United States really get away with murder? That
Yes.
premise grabbed me right from the start, and I've been a committed Baldacci reader ever since.
Well,
So
thank you.
I've got I've got about 15 of your books on my library shelf to prove it, pal. Oh man. So now I get to talk to you. That's really a thrill. So tell me about your latest book, To Die For. Tell us about Travis Devine and the girl on the train and what that story's all about.
Yeah, so the first Divine book was The 620 Man, and that he got that moniker because he took the 620 train in from Westchester, New York to Manhattan and to Wall Street every day. And
Okay.
the train played an important role in that novel. He's Army Ranger, he used to be in the Army. He wanted to stay in the Army, but something really bad happened and he had to leave under a dark cloud. Some of it was his fault. And he went to work on Wall Street because he hated it. It was like it's a self-punishment to go work on Wall Street making money for other people. And during the course of his job there, he ran into a murder. Someone he knew was murdered in the building. And Homeland Security shows up and says, "We know what should happen in the Army, so we'll give you a choice. You either come to work for us or you go to Leavenworth for a long time."
Okay.
So he decides to go to work for them. And To Die For, he is faced with a couple of different problems. One is at the end of the second book in the series, The Edge, there's a woman I call the girl on the train. And in The Edge, she tried to kill him. Her job was to kill Divine because she was hired to do it. She's a mercenary.
You
He
mean
obviously,
this 12-year-old girl?
no, this is another person. Yeah,
Okay, okay. All right. Okay.
and she's coming for him again. So
All right.
his mission in To Die For is to go to Seattle, Washington, to be the bodyguard for Betsy Odom, who's the 12-year-old girl.
Okay, got it.
Her parents just died mysteriously. Her uncle is a criminal that the federal government is prosecuting. He wants to adopt her. They don't want him to adopt her. So they think she might figure into the case they have against him. So they bring out Divine to protect Betsy. The
Yeah.
problem is Divine can hold his own in any fight. He can kill people that needs to be killed. He's really good in the field. He has no clue whatsoever what to do with a 12-year-old girl.
Okay.
It's his kryptonite.
Yeah.
But the issue becomes that he has to build a relationship with her. He has to get her to trust him.
Mm.
And he has to dig deep inside himself in order to do that and to use things inside of him he probably didn't even know he had.
Yeah.
And you see a different side of him. So they have to survive this all together. And the other problem that's complicating him, aside from the girl on the train coming after him, is that he's dealing with other agencies, the FBI and some others. Everybody's lying to him. Everybody's not telling him the whole story. And he really feels like he can't trust anybody. So that's where he's in right now, and it's a lot.
Okay. Where do you get the idea of where did you get the idea for To Die For?
I was thinking about what else I could do with Divine, and I knew that at the end of The Edge, he had this woman coming after him to finish
Yeah.
the job.
Yeah.
And then where can I put him next? I had gone to Seattle about a year and a half ago, really was inspired by what I saw out there, and decided to set the book there. But I thought, how else can I evolve Divine's character? What can I challenge him with in this novel that he wasn't challenged with in the first two? And that was really Betsy Odom, the 12-year-old girl. How is he going to deal with her? So then I built a sort of a plot around those two characters, her uncle and some other things coming into play that rounded out the plot, but allowed them to dominate what was going on in the story. But really, the biggest thing that Betsy allows me to do with Divine was to let readers see another side of this guy. They'd never seen the empathy. They'd never seen the lack of confidence in his ability to do something. He walks into a room and he just takes it over. Here, he's out of his depth. This is not his wheelhouse. And I think that is a good thing for readers to see. None of us have the answers all the time about everything. We
Right.
kind of muddle through, we figure it out as we go along. And in this book, that's really what he has to do.
How about you when you're writing these books? Are you figuring it out as you go along, or do you have a structure, a plan? How do you do it?
Now, I let it grow organically. I've tried to do big outlines and I never ended up using any of them. Outlines are a little bit of a cheat for me. You do this outline, you never even met the character on a page. You tell that you're going to say exactly what's going to happen throughout 400 pages. I don't think so. I
Yeah.
like to get into the story, see what the characters are telling me, how the feel is going, what I think the arc is going to be. Sometimes characters I didn't think were going to have much of a play in the novel end up dominating it. And some others I thought were going to be major players got shunted off to the periphery because they weren't as interesting. It's all about how is it playing out when you're actually writing the novel, not doing an outline in preparation for writing the novel.
I interviewed Jeffrey Archer. I don't know if you know who Jeffrey is.
Oh yeah, I've met
Yeah.
Jeff.
Yeah. Okay. He told me, I've interviewed him a couple of times. He told me that he writes his books in longhand and
Hmm.
he has somebody
I
type
typed them
them
up.
up for him. I just wondered, have you discovered a computer or at least a typewriter?
I do it both ways. I usually use the computer. I'll compose on the laptop.
Uh-huh.
But when it's all done, I print all the pages out and I take up my pen and I edit longhand. I like to say that I think better in cursive. But some books, when I write historical fiction, like I've done in the past,
Uh-huh.
I tend to write those out in longhand in journals. Uh,
Really?
I feel more in command of the material doing it that way.
Really? So the process is what? You write them in longhand
Yeah,
and then you go back to it and type it
yeah,
up into your computer. Is that what you do? Or
yeah. I'll do that, or I'll have one of my assistants do it. But yeah, that in
oh,
that way,
okay.
I go about changing things, tweaking things. It's much easier to do that sort of editing on a computer, obviously. But
Yeah,
I like marginalia. I like seeing that stuff. It's just really inspiring.
I understand. Now, thrillers require a lot of research. How do you approach gathering the technical details that make your plot so realistic? And has there ever been research that completely surprised or changed your perspective as you went along?
Yeah, I when I was doing a military thriller with John Puller, I went down to Fort Benning with a friend of mine who was a ranger, and I spent 3 days down there getting my ass kicked from one end of the base to the other.
All
You
right.
know, parachute jumping, functional army fitness training, sniper round, Humvee rollover test, all that stuff. When I was doing a thriller about a DC police officer, I went on not just ride-alongs, which you all heard of, but I went on walk-alongs when they're
Okay.
patrolling foot. And there was one time we were sneaking down a back alley because he had a tip that some burglars were hiding some of the stuff they'd stolen in this house.
Uh-huh.
As we walked past this fence, something hit this fence so hard it knocked one of the planks off and hit me in the head. And then you see revealed behind the little opening was this dog that was like the hound of the Baskervilles. And he was like trying to the other board off so he could get out. And I
Uh,
looked at the one officer I was with, I was like, what do we do? And he goes, we run, man, we run. So we just passed down the alleyway. And I looked at him and I said, what was that back there? He goes, that was Psycho's dog. And I said, Psycho? Who's Psycho? He's a double murderer. He got sent up and he left his damn dog. So in the book I was writing, I invented a character named Psycho, and he's in the novel. Could I not? Dude,
was the guy a double murderer?
he was a bad guy. I
He
mean,
was
I
a
think
bad guy. Do you have fun writing about bad guys?
oh, all the time because
Yeah. Is
that's
that your favorite?
yeah, because they're different. We want to know what makes these guys tick. Nobody wants to meet Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
We all want to know what made Ted Bundy because he's a human being, but he's not a human
Yeah.
being. Us.
Yeah.
So it's the fascination of the boogeyman looking under the bed. You don't want to look under the bed, but you want to look under the bed, right?
All right. So your research isn't, you don't just go on the internet and put in, ask Google to do whatever or provide you info about this or about that. You actually go out in the field
Oh
and
yeah.
do it.
Yeah, because I call it the Wikipedia research. It's like anybody can do that. Anybody
Yeah.
can Wikipedia anything. But
Yeah, right.
when I go out and the other thing when I go out, I talk to people. When I talk to
Mhm.
people, like sorts of jobs that I write about, and they don't write all this stuff down in a book somewhere. So a lot of it is just organically grown, hands-on, needed. And that's where you learn that stuff that's cool and fascinating that that's not on Wikipedia, that readers can't find anywhere else. So that's what I
Well,
like.
it's got to be hard to do, though. How do you get them to, like the cops, how do you get them to let you go along on a walk along with them?
First of all, you have to sign like 9 waivers that if you die, it's not their fault. That's one thing to do.
Okay.
I can tell you that. But I've gotten to the point in my career where agencies call me up and say, "Hey, would you like to write about us?"
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they tell me it helps with the recruitment, but gets them in the popular culture.
Yeah.
So
I guess
uh,
it helps to be famous then, David.
it does. But when you're first starting out, I was a lawyer for a while, so for 10 years, and I just approached it like that. I was like, if I knew somebody who knew a Secret Service agent, I would say, hey, any way you can get me a phone call or I can talk to this guy? Okay. But what I would do is I become a journalist. It was really important what I did next. I would find out everything I could about what that person did. So
Hmm.
and I would ask them questions that were informed and educated that showed them that I respected what they did. I was not there wasting their time, had done no legwork before I came in and asking stupid questions because you're going to
Right.
get like a 2 minute interview and then they're going to throw your butt out the door.
Yeah.
But by doing that research beforehand and doing my homework when I went in, I knew what I was talking about and
Sure.
they knew that I took it seriously and that I really truly wanted to learn and that opened a dialogue that really has been fruitful over the last 25 years. And that's how I've always done it.
That's amazing. Do you have a problem with writer's block ever, or do you just do your
It
thing and it happens?
Writer's block is just, it goes hand in hand with the process. You're not going to have all the answers all the time.
Yeah.
Something run into a wall, you're going to paint yourself into a corner. And then you just have to stick with it. Sometimes go off and do something else. If I'm having a problem with a plot or a character, I'll go for a walk, I'll go for a bike ride and take my mind away from it. And all of a sudden, bam, there's the answer. When you're really focused and thinking on it, your subconscious sort of deals with the problem. And that's how I solve those issues. So writer's block, if you want to call it that, I just call it part of the writing process, you
Yeah,
know,
sure.
because everything is not going to be there every second that you want it to be there. Some
Mm.
things take time.
Hmm. Do you feel like obviously this must have been an extremely satisfying career for you? All these novels that you've done and it must be.
I look at it as I'm lucky and privileged. I was on the outside of the window looking in for a long time where I was writing short stories and screenplays and nothing much was happening until I wrote my first novel, Absolute Power.
Uh,
So I understand what it's like to be on the outside looking in. But I also tell my writer friend who's sometimes, oh my God, I got this deadline. I'm hating life. I don't know if I'm going to be able to meet it. And I said, like, calm down. Listen what I'm about to tell you. And like, what? He said, we're paid to make shit up for a living. Right?
that's about it, right?
Yeah. So just think about that and think about how lucky you are. And then you'll stop fretting over a deadline. You know,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
that's how I approach it. I'm an 8-year-old kid writing my stories down. How lucky am I?
Yeah. Now, the bad guys that you write about, that you said that are your favorite characters, the bad guys. Do you, I don't know how to ask you this question. When you're researching these bad guys, do you go talk to bad guys or what do you do?
I've done some of that, and
Have you?
I've talked to bad guys, and I've also read a lot about bad guys, and it all
Uh,
comes down to the human psychology of it. And 9 times out of 10, unless it's they're missing a certain chromosome, which some of them were just born without, like Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy, basically born without any empathy. They can't,
uh,
they're narcissists, so they can't feel sympathy for other people. Like,
right.
how could they do that to another human being? The answer is they don't see that as another human being. They see it as something to dominate and to hurt. That's
Yeah.
all and regular, normal human beings, they can't really understand that because
Yeah.
it's just part of who they are.
Uh-huh.
So you understand the psychology of it. And then based on that, you can build in backstories to why these people do what they do. I like to have explanations, not just that they're missing a piece of chromosome, but they might have had a horrific childhood. They might have had a trauma that shook them.
Right.
Something must have happened to them that drove them to be the way they are. And not only will it impact what they do as far as hurting other people, but how they live their lives now. Do
Hmm.
they They base it on deception. Do they have small tics, mannerisms, rituals they do that set them apart from ordinary human beings? To try to explain away, the bottom line is if I'm asking a character to do something extraordinarily bad, I feel like, to be fair with the reader, I need to give them an extraordinary explanation of why they're doing that. Otherwise,
Okay.
how does it possibly make sense? I just create a crazy person and they ask, why does he do that? And I'm like, oh, he's just crazy. It's like the height of writerly laziness. It has to be more than that.
Yeah, that's true. You're taking me back to when I was a young reporter with United Press International in Trenton, New Jersey, and I decided that I wanted to do a piece on capital punishment. I went to the Trenton State Prison and got them to let me go on death row and actually sat in the electric chair, and I wouldn't let them put the cap on me though. And,
Right.
and as I walked along death row, the inmates were banging on the bars, and one guy, his name was Edgar Smith, tried to talk to me. And the warden told me that I wasn't allowed to talk to him. But he insisted. Smith kept asking me, I need you to do my story. I need you to do my story. It turned out I wrote a fairly sympathetic piece about him, and he eventually was released on appeal. And then he went and committed the same kind of crime that he had committed before that got him on death row. And that kind of changed my sympathetic view towards capital punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess maybe I was doing the same kind of research that you do, only I just didn't realize it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's all whether my sister was a journalist and I used to go with her on her beat rounds when I was still in high school and she was out of college.
Uh-huh.
The professionalism and the preparation she did for those interviews and covering those stories was really impressed me. And like how I try to do the interviews that I do now and the interviews that you did as well.
Yeah.
Whether you're writing fiction or you're writing fact, it's still all about learning things.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know, you just use it in a different way.
Yeah, that's true. How do you choose which characters to revisit in your stories, like Luther Whitney in Absolute Power or Travis Devine in To Die For? What gives those characters their staying power, in your view?
Yeah, a couple of litmus tests I use. One is, have I thought of a plot that really corresponds nicely with their wheelhouse, their set of skills, and what they can do?
Ah.
And secondly, my second litmus test is, it sounds a little weird because they're fictional. How much do I miss them? I want to spend more time with them.
Oh,
Um,
okay. That's
it's,
cool.
it's the thing. There's a
So
very,
these people become real in your mind.
I spend years of my life with them, creating
Okay.
and them in these incredibly intense stories. And it takes a lot of my emotional bandwidth to do this. So yeah, definitely. I feel I know they're not real, but in every other visceral sense of the word, they are real to me.
Are any of them particularly significant to you?
I think one, my memory man, Amos Decker, is a special character in that he is very emotionally damaged. He has these special mental gifts, but they only came about because of a traumatic injury
That
to
book is Memory Man.
Memory Man. That's a
Yeah.
Memory Man series.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my best series. He's probably my most popular character, Amos Decker. So that one is special to me because he's so very different from any other character I've ever built. And readers really resonate with him.
Yeah. I was looking as you were talking, I was turned around to look in my library to see if I have Memory Man. I think I do, but I just don't recall. When did you write Memory Man?
I think the first Memory Man was probably about 10 or 11 years ago.
Oh, so there's more than one. It's a
There,
series.
there's seven. Yeah, there's
Oh,
seven memory.
really?
Yep,
Seven.
yep.
Wow. 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 That's amazing. All right, tell me about the Wish You Well Foundation. What inspired you to get involved with that cause, and what impact has it had on you personally?
When I first started out in the writing world, a lot of my events were hosted by libraries, literacy organizations. So I got a quick and dirty education on illiteracy in the United States. And it's a big
Uh-huh.
problem. Like
Okay.
half the population read at below levels of literacy. So
Hmm.
we found literacy organizations across the country helping millions of people to read at a higher level. It's not just about reading the bestseller on the beach. It's really, without high reading skills, you can't achieve your economic potential. Without high reading skills, I don't think you can ever really achieve your moral potential too, because books make you empathetic, they make you more tolerant, less judgmental,
Right.
and they really fill out your humanity. So That's what we're trying to do. We want to make sure that everybody reads at a high level and more people read books, more people read it and more frequently. Right now, people are addicted to this thing and
Yeah.
they scroll through these little bits and pieces of disinformation and they never pick up a book because their brains can't make it through 400 pages anymore because they're shortening their brain waves with this. And that's a real problem because scrolling through crap on social media is not going to make you a better person. Reading about people who you may never meet in your whole life can broaden your humanity. That's why reading is so important. I know, and I grew up in Virginia during Jim Crow in the 60s and 70s, the old capital of the Confederacy, grew up with racism all around me.
Right.
And the only thing that saved me was that I went to the library week and I traveled the world without a plane ticket or a passport. And so my ignorance and my intolerance were destroyed because of my reading. And it made me a far better human being.
That's really well said. Now, do you have, first, let me ask you this, after all these years of writing, what keeps you motivated to continue? Do you ever feel like, I think I'll just quit now?
No, this is what I was intended to do. My motor is even stronger now than it was 20 years ago.
Really?
I'll tell you why too, because having written so many books, I work harder now than I did before because I know how good it can be if you just put a little more effort in. I've seen it for myself. My earlier books, I probably was too verbose. I used 100 words when 10 would have sufficed if I just worked a little bit harder. And so that's my goal now is to make it as lean as it possibly can be, make sure that every word has earned its right to be in the novel. And that's really what I base my success on. But I get up every day thrilled with being able to tell another story. I don't see it as a job or a hobby or a passion. I just see it as what I identify as. So if you take that away from me, then there's really nothing left. So that's how I approach every day. And that's why I'm still as juiced today as I was 25 years ago.
That's incredible. What kind of law did you practice, David?
I was a trial lawyer, so I
Oh,
did
okay.
litigation in state and federal court all over the country. And it was a very challenging, very exhilarating. I call it being gladiators in pinstripe suits. Uh,
Hmm.
and I loved being forced to think on my feet, being surprised by stuff that I didn't know was coming down the pike and having within a few seconds turn it around into a positive. I loved that game, that battle of wits. And that served me well in my writing as well. As a trial lawyer, I had the same set of facts as the other side. I just had to argue a completely different argument than they were arguing, or a
Hmm.
completely different result. So how did I do that? With the words that I chose and the way I told the story. That's what I was doing as a trial lawyer. I was telling a story to a judge or a jury, in writing or orally. And as a novelist, I'm just telling a story. And I want you to be into it. I want you to feel it's real, and I want you to enjoy it and be compelled to read the whole thing.
When you do a good job at that, let me tell you that. When you decided to give up law, and was it a hard decision? Was it a decision where I'm just going to stop being a lawyer and I'm going to be a novelist, or how did that happen?
I had sold my very first novel, and I had a family at that point. We have two kids. We had one back then, and we were going to have another as well. And I had a mortgage and bills like everybody else. So I could never stop being a lawyer until I'd made any money as a writer. So when
Right.
I sold my first book, I was financially able to leave the practice of law. And I
Okay.
said, we make these decisions together. And I said, look, I have a lot of books in me, and I think I can make a career out of this. But I
Uh-huh.
said, if I can't and it doesn't work out, I'm a good lawyer. I can always go back and being a lawyer. So we're not going to
Sure.
stop. Don't worry about that. And she said, go for it. This has been your dream, and I think you can make it too. So that's what we did. But I never took that jump until I knew that I was financially secure enough to be able to support my family.
I got it. Okay. For young authors, aspiring authors, whether they're young or not, especially those trying to break into the thriller game, what advice do you have for them?
I would say read a lot in that genre. Read what's out there because you're going to be competing against those types of stories.
Yeah.
So if you go in with something that's not at that level, editors have a lot of books to choose from. They're going to be like, it's just not cutting it. I'm sorry. So know what's out there.
Yeah.
Secondly, I would say don't necessarily write what you know a lot about. Write about what you'd like to know a lot about. Like one of the best books I ever read on any subject was Seabiscuit by Laura Hillenbrand. And when she wrote that novel, the famous racehorse from the 1930s,
Yep.
chronic fatigue syndrome, couldn't leave her house, never been to the racetrack, never ridden a horse, but she was fascinated by this horse. And so she read everything that had ever been written about Seabiscuit, about racing during the 1930s. She became an expert because she had this passion for it. And she wrote a great book because she was interested in it. And you
Hmm.
need to have a full creative tank when you sit down to write a novel. And if you're not really into it, but you just think you want to write this book, you're going to run out of gas halfway through, and nobody's going to be happy about that.
Hmm.
So find something you're really interested in because you got a long gauntlet to run, and you better make sure your tank is full. And one way to make sure your tank is full is to actually have interest in what you're writing about.
How long does it take you to do your average novel?
It all depends. I've written A Calamity of Souls came out in April. It was set in 1968, courtroom drama. That took me years and years to write. Typically for a thriller, I can write a thriller start to finish in about 6 months. Yeah.
Okay. And how much of your day do you take to do that?
I usually like I'm in Northern Virginia now. This is my office away from home. If I'm in town, I come here every day. I usually get in like right around 9 and I might leave around 4. But I also have an office at home where I continue to write. It's not a 9 to 5er. I write when it moves me, when I have things I want to get down on paper. And
Hmm.
so it could be the middle of the night and middle of the morning. It doesn't really matter. And I'm a planes and trains and automobiles kind of guy. I write everywhere. The perfect place to write is not a physical place, it's here
Hmm.
in your mind. If your thoughts are crystallized, you're in the zone and you're ready to go, sit down and produce.
Okay. That's all I have in the way of questions, David. I am so thrilled to be able to talk to you, and I thank you for taking the
Same.
time to share your experiences with us. I
Enjoyed
really
it.
do.
I enjoyed it very much. It's a great platform, and I love to talk about books and reading and writing. It's my world, so
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity for me too. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Lean to the Left video and that you found it interesting and informative. Please visit on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that focus on progressive politics and the important social issues of our time. Now, our interview shows stream on Mondays with special episodes on Thursdays. And follow us on social media. Facebook at Bob Gaddy and the Lean to the Left podcast. Now it's two. Bob Gaddy is one Facebook page, and the Lean to the Left podcast is a second Facebook page. Twitter at Lean to the Left 1, Instagram at Lean to the Left 1, TikTok at Lean to the Left, LinkedIn at Bob Gaddy, and YouTube at Lean to the Left. Now, I hope you'll support Lean to the Left as well so we can keep things going. Just click on the Donate tab at the top of the leantotheleft.net homepage and contribute by buying me a cup of coffee. That'll really help and would be much, much, much appreciated. Now, this is Bob Gaddy signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.